Before picking a solution and setting up an e-commerce site, it's a good idea to define some baseline parameters for your store. That way, you're able to compare solutions in more detail and also lay out a plan of action for how you're going to build the site itself. To help you along, I've created an e-commerce site questionnaire. This is very similar to what I provide to my clients when I build sites for them, and it helps you ask the right questions about your site before you start working on it. By answering these questions, you'll have the answers to a lot of the questions that you will encounter when you start setting up your site. Things like how are you going to receive payments and manage shipment, and how are you going to manage your stock, and so on. So take the time to fill this form out, and I'll help you along by talking in a bit more detail about each of the questions. The first three questions we've already talked about previously in this course. What are you selling? Who are you selling it to? And how are you selling it? Here I want you to describe your product. Is it a physical product? Is it a service? Is it a digital product? How are you going to manage stock? How are you going to make sure you're not over or underselling stock? How are you going to handle the actual product when it lives on the website? You also need to define who your customer is. Who's this person who's going to buy the product? Is it someone who's going to buy several products or just one? Do they want to save their information? Do they trust PayPal? All this kind of information should be in that box. And finally, how are you selling it? Are you only selling it online, or are you also selling it in stores or at events or other things? And if so, how are you going to manage your stock to ensure that you're not selling out all your products at a Renaissance fair while at the same time you're selling products online, so you'll end up having a backlog of products to need to sell? Next, how are you receiving payments? Figure out how you want the payments to come in. Do you want to use a payment portal like PayPal, or do you want to link your e-commerce site directly to your bank and use their payment system? Do you want to take payments by check or money order or direct bank transfer or even in person? Or do you want to take payment in some other way? You have to define this right at the top so that you know exactly how you're going to set the site up. Because depending on your payment options, you'll have to do different things to make it all work. Then you have to think about how you're going to manage your inventory. This is important if you are selling your product in more than one location. So if you're selling it only online, you're of course going to manage your inventory with the online shop because that's the easiest. But what if you're also selling your product in a store, or if you're selling it in a store and at fairs or conferences or whatever? In that case, you need to figure out where the primary inventory management is going to live. Is it going to live in the e-commerce solution? So when you sell a product in person, you go into the e-commerce solution and add that sale in? Or are you going to manage the inventory somewhere else and then transfer the information from the e-commerce system over to that inventory? That depends on how you run your business and what kind of products you're selling, but this is a very important decision that you have to make upfront, or at least be aware of, so that you know how you're managing what you're selling. Then we get to shipping. How are you going to ship the product? Get the product from your location to your buyer's location. This all depends on how far you're willing to ship it. Maybe you only want to sell products to people that are in your neighborhood or close by you, or you may want to sell products internationally. If so, you need to figure out how the product is actually getting from you to your customer. That could be by mail, it could be by courier, it could be by some other means, but you have to stipulate this. Do you want people to come to your house and pick it up? I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you want to do delivery or pickup, you should really have a business location, but some people choose to do it that way, and that's fine. You just have to think about it ahead of time. If you choose to do shipping, how are you going to charge for that shipping? This gets quite complex depending on what kind of product you're selling, because you can charge based on volume, you can charge based on weight. If you combine products, the weight may be increasing without the volume increasing, or you may end up shipping a very small component in a huge box to save because there's some sort of deal with the shipping company. You really have to think about how you're going to package your product and how it's going to get shipped out and how much it's going to cost you. And then you have to figure out, are you going to offset that cost in the product price, or are you going to add the cost onto the product price? And then you have to answer questions like, Do you charge tax for shipping? And do you charge handling fees and all these other things? So write that down and really think it through and look at your product and figure out how many of them fit in a small box and a medium box and a large box. And that way you'll be able to provide good shipping options for the customers. Finally, and quite importantly, make sure you know how to apply taxes to your products. This gets really tricky when you're working online because different states have different tax laws and the different tax rates within the states also apply. So in some cases, if you want to sell a product from one region of a state to another, you have to pay one type of tax, but if you send it somewhere else, may not have to pay tax, or you may have to pay a double tax. You need to figure out exactly how you're going to apply taxes to your products. The best way of doing that is to hire a tax professional. Trust me, ask someone who actually knows what they're doing about this and find out how to do it right. The worst thing that can happen is that you have a hugely successful online store, and then the tax authorities come to you and tell you that you've been breaking some obscure tax law the whole time, and you'll end up having to pay a huge fine for it. Do the homework up front. Hire a tax professional to help you figure out how to charge taxes for your products, and you'll be much better off. Answering these questions and writing the answers down now will help guide you through the setup of your site and will also help your business. Because as you can see, these are questions you need to address anyway, so it's better to do it right off the bat than wait until they become pressing.